Hi, I'm Anne Hayek, and we are back for another episode. Here today, we're talking about assumptions. Okay, we all know about assumptions. They're usually not good. So, assumption number one, if she's wearing a ring on her left finger, she's married. Or, if a guy, I would assume that. A woman, if it's not a diamond and it's not a gold band like that, I would not make that assumption and I would check. I used to wear rings all the time. I love rings, and I just put them on my ring finger because it's just a natural place to put a ring. And, if it was not a diamond or looking like a diamond, I would check before I would assume that that has something to do with being engaged or married. If it was a guy, like I said, since a lot of men don't wear rings except for their wedding ring, then, I definitely would check because they probably are married, but don't assume because there is a ring on that finger that that person is married, especially a woman. Now, this is a big one, and I ran into this quite a lot. I had a great career. I did very well for myself when I was single. And so I finally had somebody say something to me, like a guy in a Catholic circle, something about assuming that I was a career woman and wasn't going to give that up to raise children. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. And, it really annoyed me, I have to say, because, and as I said to him, I go, "What am I supposed to do? Sit around and do nothing until I get married?" And for crying out loud, I was 34 when I got married. Sitting around and doing nothing for that long, not fun. So, if somebody has a career, maybe she doesn't, but I would ask and not assume. I could not wait to get rid of my career. It could not happen fast enough. I was over and done with corporate America. I, duh, just not where I wanted to be, but what else was I gonna do? I mean, so I had my career and that was great. And I got to experience that. Don't miss it or anything either. But you need to ask questions and not make assumptions. I mean, somebody might have a career and maybe that is very important to them and they aren't going to stay home and have be with the kids when they have children. And that's important if that's what you want or are looking for. You definitely need to know that. That for me would be a deal breaker. Just as for me, if I met a guy and that was not first and foremost on his list, was for me to stay home with our children and not work, that was a huge deal breaker for me. There was no way on God's green earth that that was going to be a part of my life. I wanted to stay home with my children. And so those are important things to have on your list, but ask. Don't assume that somebody is, not going to leave their career. Don't assume if they have a job that's less than a career that they're just sitting around waiting for Mr. Right either, that, they're doing nothing. Whatever level that they have as far as a job, don't make assumptions, especially negative ones about that person or what they would do when they were married. And conversely, so in my late 20s, I got into a singles group for a Catholic singles group that was citywide in a metropolitan area. And I got to tell you, again, I definitely wanted to quit my job when we had kids. That was my plan, and that was it. But and it's more common among Catholics and conservative practicing Catholics to want that. And I got to tell you, if you're a guy, make sure you have a good job. I can't tell you how many guys I met that didn't have a good job. And I'm going, you want to have 10 kids and I don't see how that is plausible with what you're doing right now. So, just have those things in mind. But also again, we're not going to make assumptions, but ask the questions. In this day and age, men and women have gotten so beaten down with society and it's telling them what you should do. And really, it's being selfish. It's all about you. That doesn't work anywhere. And I think you can see that out in the world. So make sure that whatever you are thinking that you just verify whatever it is that, don't assume that they wouldn't quit their job or that they will, quit their job. Don't make assumptions, and make sure that that's a conversation that you have. Or, like I said, you can check with friends. Are they married? Does that ring mean she's married? I assume he is if he's got a ring on, but you could ask a friend, to find out. So those are things that you need to think about, so that you're not writing off somebody that you shouldn't write off, and not just assume that this or that is true. So, and this can happen in all sorts of different ways. When we meet somebody, we get a certain idea in our head that, maybe you meet a guy and he travels for work all the time, and maybe, you're thinking, oh my gosh, if we were married and we had kids and he was gone all the time, I don't know if I could handle that or if I would like that. And maybe for some people that's not a big deal, and maybe you're worried about it. If it's a concern, you know bring it up eventually. You don't have to know them super well, or you could be like, oh, what would that be like when you're married? I mean, it depends on your setting too. When you're in a group of a bunch of Catholic people that are marriage minded, that's not such a hard question to ask. So also it depends on your environment. Or if you're dating, you definitely want to ask that question, because like I said, some people that might be too much. You don't want your husband to be gone that much when you're married, and some people, it's like, what? My parents were that way, we can figure it out. They travel a lot for work, it's okay. So, those are other places where just don't assume that whatever somebody is doing right now, that they're gonna continue to do when you get married. So, for example, when I met my husband, he obviously had a job and he traveled some, but he also was volunteering on a board for Habitat for Humanity. Oh no, animals, animal shelter. Sorry. And, I know what I was thinking is, okay, his time is taken up with this on the board of this animal shelter, plus his full time job. And it really took up a lot of time. And it did make me wonder a little bit, like, what's going to happen? When we get married, are you going to have all this time away? But I would, paid attention to him and how he dealt with things. And, it was a conversation that we had that maybe that doesn't fit into when you first get married. You want to be establishing your relationship. But, I could have written him off and gone, oh my gosh, he's so busy. He has these things on his plate. And I just don't want that when we get married at all, or in our first year or two, or when we have kids, maybe later, whatever. So, don't make assumptions of any kind, and make sure to ask the person or somebody that about them, whatever's appropriate, on their thoughts about things. And this is, as you get further into dating somebody, you want to bring up these types of questions when you see things that could be a red flag. So if he was really into being on this board and I thought it took up too much of his time for me, then that's something where I need to evaluate, does this work for me or not? Or is this fine? So ask questions and don't just make assumptions that, like I said, whatever they're doing now, they're going to continue doing when it comes to things like that, having a job and volunteer work or whatever, because sometimes it does fit and sometimes it doesn't. I taught catechism for years and years and years up until we got engaged. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not a planner. Planning our wedding was the worst thing in my whole life. Never wanted to do that. I wanted to be married. I didn't want to plan a wedding. Oh, not my thing. Very stressful. It's probably stressful for everybody, but there's type A's and super organized people. And I don't know, maybe you enjoy that. I'm happy for you. Oh, anyway, very stressful time for me was to plan that wedding. And so I couldn't teach. I had to step down. That was really hard. Now, my now husband could have wondered, is she going to still do that? Is that too much time away with planning and whatever? Who knows? I'm just giving you an example. I don't think he probably ever cared. But these are just things that you need to talk about with each other to see if you're on the same page. Being on the same page is what's important. Doesn't matter what that page is, as long as you're the same or similar on your assumptions, your ideas, and what you are looking for. So, whatever that is, or like, maybe you meet a guy and he is at his parents' house every night of the week. Well, that would be a big red flag for me. Maybe you love that. So it's different. And so find out. And as you get along dating, is he still doing that thing? Is he giving up some of that time to be with you? Or is it always his family before you? Now, that would be a red flag for sure, because, yeah, putting somebody they got to start putting you first at some point in that dating relationship. So think about those assumptions you have when you meet somebody, before you meet somebody, and when you're dating, and make sure that you bring them up. If you think it's you, like, oh my gosh, am I being too petty? Am I being too paranoid? Because we get that way. Then talk to a friend or your parents and say, you know, this is what's happening and I'm worried. What do you think? I mean, these can be huge things or they can be small, like they're volunteering and it's a lot of time along with their job. Um, how do I deal with that? Or it can be bigger things like, they travel constantly and they're never home already and you're dating. Am I, should I bring this up? At a certain point in your relationship, if that's the case and you are worried, yeah, you should bring it up, but don't make assumptions. And then when you do bring something up, so let's just say it's this travel and they're gone all the time. Monday through Friday, and then they're just spent on the weekend when then you finally get to see them. Well, is that what you want your life to be like when you're married? Is that how you want your spouse to be with your children? Is that if they're used up now and they're single, that's going to be worse when you're married. So, you need to talk to them about that. And then if they say, well, this is my job and I love it and this is the way it's going to be, and that might work for you and it might not. And so you need to evaluate that. So if it doesn't, then you need to make a decision. Okay, I can't live with that. I know I'd be so stressed out. I know I need more support when we're married. And so I need to walk away. That's, fair, and be honest with the person and say, you know what, I don't think as a marriage partner that I just can't live with all that. And maybe they change and go, okay, you know what, I can adjust. I can adjust. And you see them adjust. They start pretty fast. They tell you the plan. Okay, I can't do anything for this month because my traveling is planned, but here's how I can adjust it. And then watch and see, does it really happen? Does that really happen? Or maybe they say, you know what, I love my job. This is the way it is, and I love traveling. And so this is me. Okay, you have your answer. All answers are fair. All answers are okay. It is just, do they work together? Are they okay for both of you? And if they aren't, then you need to move on. And yeah, it's hard, but you have to go, all right, is this a place that I can make, a compromise or not? And are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to resent that person if you go, okay, I'll just have to deal with it. I'll be fine. And are you going to resent them? You really need to think through these things, because you might go, you know what, this is a great person and we will make it work. And I am just going to put my faith and trust in our relationship and our faith. And that's fine. But you have to then go forward in that positive mind frame of, we're going to make this work and we'll figure it out. But if you go forward with, okay, I really like him, but I don't like this. I don't like this. I hate this. I hate this. Okay, that's not good. That's not a good mind frame to be in. So if you can't really truly work through that, then you need to part ways. So be true to yourself in these important facets that you evaluate both yourself and somebody else. And in the same thing, if somebody comes to you with, I see that you are volunteering here and here and here, and you have a job, and I know you're going to give up your job, but what about these volunteering things? That clearly a lot of more things fit into your life when you're single than they do it when you're married, because you need to spend time together. You need to establish your life together. And if you're not home together enough, that's not a good foundation, and that can be very difficult. So if they come to you with the same thing, you need to think about it. Okay, well, yeah, I'm doing this now because I'm dating. We're dating. I'm not married, but yeah, I totally would not be doing this because I'd be focusing on the house and our relationship. So these are all good conversations to have. And how do you work through that? Are you able to just say, oh my gosh, yeah? Or does one of you get furious because somebody asked you a question? Or do they get defensive and they can't even resolve this little issue of, I'd totally be willing to give up this volunteer work. I love it. I love the people, but you're right. When I get married and, if you are Catholic, you're probably planning to have kids right away. And so, this is big change fast. So it's something you got to think about fast. And so these changes will be happening very quickly in your life. So, if you can't work through something like that, simply just asking each other questions like, what are you going to do with this? And how would that work if we were married? Um, if you can't work together to talk about these things to get on the same page, and one or both of you gets super defensive or angry about small things, then I would really look at that as a red flag too. And really also evaluate, is it you? Are you the one that can't handle it? Is it him or her that can't handle it? What is going on here? And can you figure out how to get to talk about things, because you're going to have a lot more things when you get married to talk about that are going to be bigger than this example of giving up volunteer work. And so if you can't have conversations about these places where you're going to need to give and take, or you could see in the future that you're going to need to give and take, if you can't talk about it now with this person, run, because you need to be able to do this. And it can be challenging. I'll tell you, me personally, I absolutely hate confrontation and bringing up issues with anybody. I will sweep them under the rug before I will talk about them. I hate it. And I just don't like it. I think growing up in a lot of the relationships around me, I didn't see people being able to deal with them very well, or they didn't deal with them, and certainly not the way that I would want to deal with it, where you don't get angry because somebody says, I don't like this. Can you change this? Or, can you give this up or whatever? I didn't like it when you said this. I didn't like the way you said this, whatever. There's things like that that you're going to come across with each other, and you need to be able to work through those things. And so run if you can't, and evaluate, where is this breakdown? Is it me or is it them? Or both? Are you just like, are you like, wow, I can talk about this stuff with all my friends, but when it's this person I'm dating, it's hell and brimstone, fire and brimstone, and it's like World War III, nothing. Okay, you're just not a good match. And then really think about, is it you? And is it them? If it's them, whatever. Okay. But if it's you, ask your friends, is this how I react? Am I like this with everybody? Is this something I need to learn about myself so that I can change? And I'll tell you, so as I was saying, I was terrified of, not terrified, but just hate confrontation or telling somebody that, I didn't like this when you said this or did this. In fact, the only person that I am absolutely not worried about confrontation or whatever, however you want to put it, is actually my husband. Just we've always been able to talk about whatever and not get up in arms, and I feel safe when I can tell him something I liked or didn't like or want or don't want or whatever. He's the only person that I feel safe with talking about anything like that. I still will not bring up stuff to other people, hardly ever. And you need to in your marriage. You have to, or you're going to be resentful if you are not able to say, I didn't like this, or I do like this. And so that might be a really big place that you have to work on. And I highly recommend that you figure out how to do that, or start practicing with your best friend, because, they love you and you trust them the most. Find somebody to practice with. If you have to go to therapy or just start journaling, how do I work through things if it is me having a hard time talking about it? Or just make sure that when you start dating somebody, or that you are able to say things. And you know what? In the beginning, it is scary because you don't know how they're going to react. You could say, I didn't like that when you use that tone with your mom. And you don't know if he's going to rip your head off or what he's going to do. And if he does, then maybe you want to run, or maybe he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I said it that way. And maybe, so when we're respectful and telling each other things that we see that, we're kind of concerned about or that we need to bring up, it's important that we can do that. And it's important that you pay attention to how you both respond if you can work those things out and if they're the right person for you to move forward with. Because, like I said, you're going to have way bigger things to deal with when you get married than, giving up something simple like a volunteer job. So, think about all those assumptions, write them out, and start asking your friends and family how you are. You might know already that you avoid confrontation like the plague. And so you might need to work on that, however it is. Or you go in like a bulldozer and, running anybody over with exactly what you think and feel. And maybe you need to calm that down. So find the balance. But work on those things, work on talking to people, asking questions instead of making assumptions, and working on the conflict resolution. I'm Ann Hayek. Remember to like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.